ดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ
So thank you for joining us today. So today we're going to talk about the aging societies in Thailand, in Malaysia, and also other countries in Asia as well. So tell us 3 words that perfectly describe the aging population here in Thailand.
Whoa. I think the first is just the scale of it. Thailand, of course, in Asia is a large population. And what we are seeing is the number of older persons in Thailand is particularly large. We're looking at about 14 million older Thai people. And that represents at least 20% of the Thai's population. So size would be one. The second is the speed at which the population is aging in Thailand. I think what we are seeing is at least, in the last 10 years, the aging population has grown by about 40%. And for Southeast Asia, it is particularly fast. So that would be probably my second. The third is opportunities. What older Thai people represent is really a well of wisdom, a well of opportunities to interact with other generations, to pass on knowledge and skills. So I think that really needs to be harnessed. In addition to that, it is an opportunity when the population is aging to look at economies differently, to look at, we use the term silver economy, to represent the potential of a new market in terms of what we can do for older people, what older people can do for us.
Right,
so I think that's really great.
So size, speed, and opportunities. So what opportunities do you see?
I see an opportunity of the fact that the aging population in Thailand is actually a success of a country that has made the right investments at different times. And so people are living longer. And that in itself reflects that we've really invested in health, for example, and therefore there's that opportunity that we can continue to do that. And as this population ages with dignity, with health, they can still be utilized in many things in the economy. I think gone are the days when we've felt that older people should just be set aside and they are dependent on other population groups, whether it is what we call now the sandwich generation. Now I think as older people age, they still have the strength, they still have the activity, and they still have the wisdom and the wherewithal to actually contribute to development. And so I think that is an opportunity we mustn't lose sight of, and we must really continue to harness and use.
Right. And many countries in Southeast Asia, including Thailand, have become aging societies already. So how do you foresee the increase of the elderly populations in Thailand and also in Malaysia?
So I'm lucky in the sense that I cover both Malaysia and Thailand, and I'm actually based in Kuala Lumpur. And so I've had the opportunity to see both these countries not only put the priority on an aging population, but also look at things that they can do differently. And so I do think, in that sense, we've really been able to harness that. And in a few ways, I think, both from the social investments that are made, but also from the opportunities that return on investment can have. So really, for both, Malaysia is a little bit different in the sense that it doesn't have as many older persons. It is in a less off sort of almost 10 years. Thailand has had experience in aging populations than Malaysia has. And so there's a lot as well that we can learn from that. Malaysia's average sort of population age, it's called the median age, is only 30 years. Whereas for Thailand, it's 40 years. In other parts of Asia, it goes up to about 50 years. And so really, again, here's an opportunity to look at what we call a third demographic dividend and to see how we can actually use that better. And so these are some of the similarities, I think, that exist, and definitely things that we can share across the 2 countries.
Right, but since you've been looking at both Malaysia and Thailand, what do you think are the unique differences in terms of the aging population between the two countries?
So, Malaysia is a very multi-ethnic and society, and in that sense, I think the way they address or they, live with older people and the way they think in their values is slightly different, in the sense that a lot of it is very based around a family-based care system, and so the notion of an older person living on their own or not living in a sort of extended family system is less the issue. And I think from what I've seen in the Thailand context, the chances of an older person living on their own, a single-headed household, exists more. And so I think there's that sort of very unique difference there, and one needs to then look at, are there things we can do better? Secondly, I do think that for Thailand, and it's about gender.
Yeah.
Because in Malaysia, the role that women play in caretaking, whether it's a daughter or a daughter-in-law, in the caretaking of the older person, that disparity between her and her husband or a male is quite large. Whereas I think in the Thailand society, it's almost parity. So, a son or a son-in-law would look after an older person in the same proportion as a woman would. And so I think that difference puts an undue burden on women in the Malaysia society when it comes to caretaking that I don't know that we see in the Thai. So those would probably be two very unique, sort of differences in how aging populations are seen in the social construct.
It's really interesting how you mentioned that gender plays a huge role in people's mindset when it comes to caretaking the elderly people in the family. Like in Malaysia, they tend to leave it to women to take care of their grandparents, but in Thailand, it's both men and women. But then, what's behind the reasoning? Is it like the cultural values or is it the social expectations there in Malaysia?
I think it's both. I think indeed it's so the way society has put specific gender roles, and in Malaysia that's much more obvious. So the woman, it's a very, very patriarchal society. I'm not saying that Thailand isn't.
Thailand is as well.
But I do think that you see it playing out much more in the context of Malaysia. And we're seeing really difficult statistics when we even look at the data in terms of women leaving the workforce to take on that caretaking responsibilities. And it's on both ends of the spectrum because, again, with Malaysia going through its transition, its demographic transition a bit earlier than Thailand, we still have quite a significant youth population and children. And so the woman is looking after the child, is also looking after the grandparent, and that really takes her out of the workforce. And so her informal sort of role and care and work is not even recognized. It's, and so that I think is the pressure that you see.
And it's always the women that has to deal with the unpaid care work, and they're also working. But I think what Thailand and Malaysia have in common is that the mindset that women still have to take care of the children, do the household chores, and also taking care of the grandparents as well. So why do you think this mindset hasn't really changed, especially in Southeast Asian cultures?
It is fundamentally an issue of power and the reluctance, I think, of those who hold the power to give it in. I do think we're seeing change, and that has come about not only by education and women particularly being educated, but by policy. And you're seeing many more women in political positions, many more the political commitment and will to women's participation is clearly taking on a better stage. And so, have governments like Malaysia has a particular target in terms of female participation in policy work, but also in female labor force participation. And I think that shift will happen. And when that happens, it also means that we have to do better as we socialize men and boys in terms of what women can do. There needs to be many more champions amongst men for gender equality. And I think the more we do that, you'll see that change and that shift, which I think would be fundamental.
Right, and back to aging societies, even though we're seeing an increase of the elderly population, both in Thailand, Malaysia, and in Asian countries in general, but what we've also noticed is the declining birth rate. So why do you think this is becoming such a huge issue now?
It's because it's real. I think we are seeing trends that are significant. I mean, in Thailand, in the last 5 years, the numbers of births has dropped by about 125,000. So these are real numbers. UNFPA has been very clear that individual choice around how many children to have, when to have that child, if to have it at all, is a right. It's a reproductive right. And therefore, in as much as the data tells us it's dropping, we must still safeguard those rights. And I wanted to say that because I think as birth rates drop, we get very nervous and anxious because policy changes and wants to raise the birth rate. And they want to do that from a very economic, macroeconomic perspective, because it really is true that as fewer births happen and we're thinking of a long-term economic prospects, we're shrinking a workforce. And, that workforce is the one that we believe drives the economy. And so if you're not having as many moving into that workforce and the dependency ratios all change, then macroeconomically, you're not doing what you need to do in terms of their ability to grow the economy and to look after the older and to look after the younger. I think we need to think about that also. Apart from the rights issue, we need to think about that in a different way. Because like we've just said about women's labor force participation, if a woman is able to decide when to have that child and to actually take time and work and put that in perspective, she then contributes to the economy. So, support that. If she's educated and doesn't have to start having children early, she gets more educated, and that has a benefit on the economy. So I think sometimes we look at it, technology, another area that we're seeing transformation in technology. So there are other ways in which the economy can actually grow that doesn't require, more birth rates in that sense. And so I think that's what we have to put our minds to. What else can we look at? Can technology drive economies? I've talked about the silver economy. The fact that we are seeing an aging population means that we can also look at how are older people still contributing to that economy and that sort of economic growth and social inclusion. That not just having children. And I always say that even if you want to try today to increase birth rates, it's going to take 20 years for that child that's born today to actually, work really hard to improve the economy.
Yeah.
And so, we need to also think about that.
Yes, and when we talk about declining birth rates and not having enough children, people would often think about the economy, the workforce, but then there are still many underlying issues, whether it's the economic situation, the access to healthcare, or even the mindset of people nowadays where they think that they don't need to have children if they don't want to. So When it comes to implementing policies to encourage more people to get married and have children, what do you think is the most worrying part from your perspective?
I think it's just the ability that sometimes, in fact all the time, doesn't take into account the rights. Exactly what you said, my choice, my decision to decide how many children I want to have, to decide when I want to have that. And really, it's that taking away of that I think is the most worrying. And so that's what UNFPA continuously brings to the forefront. I can't tell you how many children you want to have. I don't know why you've chosen. And I keep on saying it's not the total fertility rate that we use and we throw around. It's not, it's not reaching replacement that matters. What governments need to really take into account is if I wanted to have 3 children and I'm only having 1, why am I not having the 3, the ones that I desire? What is holding me back? Is it economic, as you said, I can't afford it? Is it really just a life choice? Is it issues of I can't find the right person that I want to marry so that I can bring this child into this world? In other countries, we know that even issues of climate and environment are determining how younger people are deciding whether to have children or not. Is it my feeling as a woman that I want to do my career first and I really want to get ahead? So the reasons behind that are what we need to come to the common place with individuals around what can we do to enable that to happen. Many of the policies now that we're seeing have a lot to do with childcare, have a lot to do with, work-life balance in the workforce, in the workplace. Can I manage that? Do I have a crash? Can I really do that? And those are really important policy options and choices that one needs to make.
So what would be your recommendations to the Thai government?
So I think first it's really centering it on rights and really understanding that. For the older population, I think it's really important to also, first and foremost, ensure this notion of being part of a policy. It is really fundamental for us not to assume we know what older people need and want. And so that inclusion in a policy discussion, in a policy decision is fundamental moving forward. And also because for many of them, they're part of the implementation of the policies that we have. And so I think that is really number one in terms of, we need to do better. For older persons, and that cohort is going from, of course, 60 to 80 now. We're even getting people who are living to 90 and 100. The long-term care system needs to be put in place because while, for the most part, they're still able, there will be times when you reach a certain age where we just really do have to ensure that their health and the care for long-term is taken into account. And really just dignity and respect in that. There is a shift as well that we need to recognize in the profile of health. And we need to therefore look at capacities to be able to address that in a different way. I definitely think we're not investing enough in the research as well, in understanding those shifts. So I think healthcare for older persons is key. And like I said, for those who want to have children and to, it really is a recognition of what can we help to enable them to do that better.
And what do you think remains missing in the policies implemented by the Thai government that you still want to see?
I think definitely a little bit, much more on the gender, on the gender angle. Much more on a life course, and UNFPA promotes not only a life course approach, so it's not just investing in the long-term care or investing in pensions and that. It's investing from the start, and we call it cradle to grave, so that the younger generation also knows what it's going to be like, retiring and aging, and are healthy. as that comes. And so that real investment in a life course approach, in a lifelong approach to aging is going to be very key. The other thing I would say is that many sectors are key in population aging, and there needs to be a coordinated effort. And it would do well for government to bring those sectors together in a much more coordinated way, so that we're all sort of addressing it in a much more coherent way. So those would be some of the things that I think, that definitely need to be worked. Community is key. Civil society and what they're doing, it's amazing. I had the opportunity to go up to the north of Thailand and work with old associations in communities who would actually go into households and do the first line care, checking blood pressures, checking how are you today, just being there to even just talk to older people. And that was really refreshing. So I think this link between community-based care for older persons and proper systems and health systems is going to be really important as we move forward.
And one last question, how can Thailand and Malaysia learn from each other in terms of improving the quality of living for the elderly population?
So fundamentally, we need to exchange more. And Malaysia is the chair of ASEAN this year, and we're really excited about that. When Thailand was the chair of the ASEAN, they created what was called the ASEAN Center for Aging and Innovation, which is based in Bangkok. And that provides really a platform for exchanging. And I think, we need to do much more of that. Malaysia has every year an annual aging conference where they bring data from research, new evolving technology, whether it's in digital, ways and assisted, technologies for older people. And I think that research and that sharing needs to continue. That's number one. There's just so much that they can exchange and do better. And, UNFPA would love to continue to leverage both, and I know that in my role, I'm doing that every opportunity I have to share experience, to learn from each other. And like I said, because Thailand's a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of its aged society, Malaysia also has a lot to learn. So in this year, I think as ASEAN communities, we really are trying to bring that network together. And really look at that intergenerational solidarity that we can actually harness.
That sounds very exciting. Thank you so much for today.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Okay.